This nearly asleep Loremaster has an update for all of you wonderful viewers out there. Been trying for about an hour now to record effectively through the medications I've taken to help me sleep properly. However, it's getting significantly harder and harder for me to track my thoughts and remember the words and point that I'd been building off of from a sentence I'd spoken not more than 30 seconds ago. So that's proving to be a bit difficult. I wanted to talk and ramble on a bit about the nature of power and everything, like that ephemeral concept of power through leadership, whether through nation states, kingdoms, city states, whatever the case may be, how the workings of power end up working for individuals and how we roll these things into our campaign settings through world building or setting the backdrop for a particular campaign or short adventure arc, whatever the case may be. How all of that we can utilize for gaming through those means in order to make just something feel either that much more fleshed out in the world or just putting forth new, exciting stories for our players, and let's be honest, for ourselves too. We create these stories, but we're by no means the only storytellers at the table. We just have the responsibility, the pleasure, the fun of crafting the central story and the setting in which the story takes place. That's the biggest thing there. We let our players loose into it in order for them to explore the setting and make of it what they will, within whatever bounds you're willing to set, but they will still make of it what they will and add their own personal touches, their marks, their stamps on the story you've laid out before them that they've taken to start telling their own stories, their own individual stories, their stories as a group, their stories as different pairings of different sets of friends and characters as they go across these adventures to tell greater and greater, grander and grander, better and better, more inherently compelling stories. And that's why we get into gaming, is these stories, these moments that we can have with our friends. Even if you're just more of a war gamer rather than an RPG player. Even if you're just focused on numbers and stacking your numbers and taking different traits and feats to have numbers. Look at this item. It fits perfectly with the numbers that I've built up here. If you're that kind of more numbers-focused player, you're still getting a story out of this. You're just focused on different aspects of the story, which, not for me, but absolutely fine. There's not really a wrong way to play unless you're not having fun. Or, I would say, if you're actively making things unfun for anybody else at the table. Not that individuals aren't responsible for their own happiness at the end of the day, but certainly helps when people just aren't being jerks or, thoughtlessly going out of their way to and ending up affecting others. Not saying that there isn't room for error, but, oh, goodness, see, I'm starting to go down rabbit trails after I've already made the point, I think. Medication. Anyways, so, that's why we get into this particular hobby. It's why it's so much fun is the stories you end up telling afterwards of those clutch die rolls that you had at this really pivotal, important moment that would alter the course that the campaign ended up taking. You still retell those stories even if you're focused on how well you stacked the numbers and how that was carrying you through, the strategy you had for your particular character build. All of that is still a story. You're just focused on different aspects of the story. Whereas, for somebody like me who balances the numbers, understanding the benefit of having something that at least kind of synergizes, kind of has a thought out mechanic, trick, or particular set of tricks and maneuvers behind it, I still love having more of a story to begin with. I can challenge the numbers however I need to, through whatever rules or mechanics I need to, and I'm more than comfortable to homebrew things, and my players are comfortable with my homebrew because they trust me to make things interesting, maybe bend or break the rules here, but do so consistently and not outside of the realm of interesting or challenging or interestingly challenging, and not being, that die-hard, hardcore Gygaxian, ultra Gygaxian, trying to screw players over at every single turn kind of DM. I like telling a good story, having challenges, having good challenges, but interesting stories are why I game, why my particular circle of friends and players games. And yeah, I bring everything I know and think about into it. My long-time love of history and what I went to school for and what I'm currently at work for. I bring my knowledge of history into it, and history, especially for those of you who are historians, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Being a history major requires you to be multifaceted in your disciplines and interests, especially if you have ADHD. It compounds things, which is why big part of why I love history, and I wouldn't be surprised to learn that there are a lot of other people really, really into history that have ADHD and know so many other extra, almost seemingly tertiarily related things, and how they all still tie in with history, looking like a big leap in logic to other people. But anyways, you have to be multifaceted in going into history, or end up developing into a multifaceted, on your knowledge base kind of person by delving into history, because you're looking at different things and going, how did that happen? And suddenly, after reading for a couple hours each day on a particular subject, you understand a whole lot more about banking and finance and why certain laws evolved the way that they did to regulate them, and why those regulations were put in place. So you end up learning a lot about other intellectual disciplines, or even other physical disciplines. How many historians have ended up deciding to take up blacksmithing and trying to not only, getting their introduction into it through more modern means and teachers, but then, progressing into or being able to find those who practice through traditional means, no automated powered hammers and the like, hand-built furnaces to heat, store enough heat to really heat that metal up to the temperature you need to start baking, burning the carbon out of it in certain areas and certain amounts, and refining things and understanding blade geometry and how that affects the weight distribution, which affects the handling, which affects how people fight, why weapons get designed the way they do, what means of defense are they meant to overcome. All of these things just kind of feed and feed and feed, so you learn more and more and more about so many different steps. Now, if your learning is only through books and intellectual pursuits, then you'll understand a lot about it, but you won't have that experience of knowing and feeling what it's like to do those things, which, it doesn't invalidate the knowledge, but it certainly does not give you quite that same depth of understanding and appreciation. So there are many historians who end up taking up blacksmithing or any of these other traditional arts of arts or crafts and methods of producing things in order to gain a deeper understanding of those things. As there's so many things that historians end up relearning because somebody has gone out there and done a job either closely related, directly evolved from, or the exact same kind of job that has been done for centuries. Saddle making and leather working. Sure, some of the practices have been refined or altered through other artificial means, some automated lines of production on some things. There's still lots of tools, handmade tools, that are damn near prehistoric, actually are prehistoric, not just near, that still end up in use today. And just knowing that can be mind-blowing in and of itself. Understanding how it's used, how exactly that technique feels, can give you insight into so many other things. You gain a better understanding of, oh, that's why they do it like that. Same thing with fighting, you know? You can read a lot about the different fighting techniques for different martial systems from throughout the ages up to the modern day and age. But, you know, till you get hit, you can't really describe what getting hit feels like. And getting hit by somebody that's been practicing, has been actively challenged over their training, and has really developed into somebody who knows how to throw a hit. You never know what that feels like either. And man, yeah, so there's lots of understanding that is gained by doing, gained by reading, and all of that just comes together and feeds together in a really wonderful way that lets you put what you know into some kind of use, even if it's just for entertainment, relaxation kind of purposes. You're still making use of that knowledge, which just feels gratifying in and of itself. But then seeing the reactions and looks on your players' faces as they engage with whatever you've put in place, there's nothing better than when they go, that was the best thing ever. That was one of the best moments of gaming I've ever had. I've had that said to me before, and by friends are the kind of people that will cup check you pretty damn effectively. So, those are I make them sound like monsters. No, they're wonderful people, really wonderful people, great people that I'm glad to have in my life. But they are the kind of people who will, you know, they'll be blunt. They won't be cruel, but they won't hesitate to tell me what they think. Or, you know, if they're thinking about it, you know, they're trying to give thoughtful, constructive advice. Again, blunt, but they'll tell me. They'll tell me if I've been on too long about a subject. Or they'll tell me if they disagree with me on a particular decision I make. They don't have any concerns, annoyances, or fears over that. Not that I think many people are afraid of me. So, all of these different things, you know, bringing in that knowledge of history, does a lot for world building, understanding political science. History and political science go together magnificently well because, you know, getting into diplomacy, the history of diplomacy and political maneuverings between nations is still just history at the end of the day. Say just. It's still history, so you can end up learning a lot about it. Maybe not always particularly modern insights into these things. Well, unless you're a modern historian. Anyways, point being, all of this knowledge comes together and can be used so effectively for building compelling worlds, incredibly in-depth, very well thought out or detailed stories. It's just anything and everything can end up being made useful to a campaign. I'm pretty convinced of that at this point. I mean, I've taken like a little bit of time to learn about fashion, you know, runway shows, some of the big name brands out there or designers out there that just make these stupendous, for that show only kind of dresses, just as a way of peacocking around and showing off what they've done and what they've contributed, what they've developed, what kinds of arts they've introduced and are applying in their own world. And that made for actually surprisingly useful knowledge. And it was just a random hit of dopamine I was getting from my dopamine-starved brain, and I just decided to read up on the fashion world and kind of learn more about that. And then the history of finances and how financial and economic means are so massively influential on politics and power. And a lot of Marxist historians out there went, yes, the economic aspects. Absolutely. Massively informative and important. Definitely an important lens and take to have in mind. Absolutely. But by no means not the only one. Anyways, I could go on about a lot of that too. Yeah. Here I am rambling. I just realized I'm rambling maybe about 15 minutes-ish or so about all of these different things with my brain's just sinking more comfortably into that warmth of about to hit the pillow. Nice cool pillow, sounds fantastic. So, with all of that said, those are the kinds of things we're going to be looking forward to in the coming weeks. We are going to start covering, I'm pretty confident in saying, the Samurai class, sitting at darn near 50% of the 45-ish or so votes that it's accrued over on the community tab. If you want to vote and see something other than the Samurai come up, well, you're going to have to convince a number of other people to go over and start voting and start catching up with the Samurai, because they've got a bit of a pace on you there. So, with all that said, if you're all new here to the channel, or if any of you are new here to the channel rather, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamers Den. And remember to hit those like or dislike buttons, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. This was definitely a little bit more of an update, and sorry not having a video with specifically useful content on it. It's mostly our half-asleep Loremaster rambling at you for almost 16-ish minutes or so now. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and thank you all so very much for your time. And you all have yourselves a good night.